Hi friends, welcome back to This Homeschooling Naturopath. My name is Hannah and I'm a homeschooling mom of 3 little girls who are 9, 7, and 5 who are currently all screaming. On this channel I share content related to homeschooling, homemaking, motherhood, as well as naturopathic info throughout some of our videos here. In today's video I'm going to be giving you guys a candid, honest opinion review on Gather Round Homeschool. How we use it, why we use it, my thoughts on it, all of that, the nitty-gritty of my personal opinion of Gather Round, as well as what I'm going to be buying from their upcoming sale, which is happening next week. So, if you're interested to see how, why, all of that in regards to Gather Round and what I'm going to be buying in the upcoming sale, stay tuned. Spoiler alert, I am a big fan of Gather Round Homeschool. We're currently, I've just counted up, we have done 10 units from Gather Round so far in our 1.5 years of homeschooling. Well, we're still working on some of them, so it's not like we've completed 10, but yeah. So I feel like at this point I'm pretty confident to give you guys my personal thoughts on Gather Round. The first unit we did from Gather Round Homeschool was First Christmas. This was such a great unit, like only positives to say about it. The next unit that we did was Oceania, which I'll put here, but I've also got here. This unit, you guys, this is the unit that made me fall in love with Gather Round. This is the reason why we continue to do Gather Round today, pretty much. When we finished this unit, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do now? I need more Gather Round. And so that's exactly what I did. And after we finished this, the way that I used Gather Round had kind of evolved quite a bit, and I knew a bit more about it. I felt more confident using it and all of that. So what I have done ever since we finished this was I only pick science heavy, well, for the most part, I only pick science heavy units because we use Gather Round as our main science curriculum. Anyways, the next unit that we did was farming and food. There is something, oh, these are cutouts. Farming and food, again, only positives to say about this unit. So many fond memories of working through this unit with my kids. We went on farm trips, we milked cows, we just so fruitful, and that was mainly thanks to picking this unit. So absolutely love. This is something we'll definitely do again in the future. The next unit that we did from Gather Round was the human body unit. Again, very science heavy. I have a degree in health science and naturopathic medicine, so the human body was something that, you know, I wanted to cover with the kids. Yeah, and that unit was great. I have nothing negative to say about it, but we didn't like it as much as we did Oceania and farming. I'll say that much. The next unit we did was the Thanksgiving unit. This was beautiful, so much fun. I learned so much information that I didn't know prior. During the month of December just been, we did Christmas Around the World, which was so much fun. And currently we're working through Oceans, which I've got here. Our teacher's guide for Oceans, as well as Artists, which I've got here. Loving them, nothing negative to say currently. So those are the main units that we've done as a group. Those are like our family science subjects for the most part, you know, apart from Artists, obviously. And for my 9-year-old, I like to incorporate a couple of Gather Round units for her that are kind of for her language arts. She doesn't have like a specific language arts program at the moment, so I have used these 2 units from Gather Round for her language arts. The first one I've got here is entrepreneurship, that we're just about finished with. She has absolutely loved this, and I love that Gather Round has units like this because she is like an entrepreneur and she has flourished with this curriculum. And then next up, we're going to be moving on to careers and trades, which she is so excited about, and it's motivating her to finish this one more quickly. So all in all, 10 gather round units, which honestly I was kind of shocked by. I didn't realize we had done that many, or you know, we're still working on some of them, but I honestly didn't know that 10 was the number we were up to so far. So now that you guys know the units that we've covered, I'm going to explain a little bit about how we use Gather Round in our homeschool, because it is not the way that it is intended to be used. If you're unfamiliar with Gather Round is a faith-based Christian curriculum that encompasses all of your subjects apart from math. So you get your teacher's guide and you get your student books, which every student book, you know, is for a specific age of children. For example, my 9-year-old is in the early elementary, my 7-year-old is in the early reader, and my 5-year-old is in the pre-reader. And so the idea is that I read the lesson, we do it all together, and while I'm reading, they can work through the pages in their student books. The student notebooks consist of history, science, social studies, language arts, art, Bible, and I feel like there may be more. There's probably more that I'm forgetting. So there are families that strictly use Gather Round as well as a math curriculum and nothing else. The families that use Gather Round in this way are able to work very quickly through the units. So the majority of Gather Round's units are 20 lessons long, and this would generally, if you were only using Gather Round Homeschool as well as your math, you would be getting through a lesson every day, which obviously you would be finished the book within that month. We have never used Gather Round in this way because I like to use a lot of other curriculum. Not anything to do with Gather Round, that is just the journey that we've been on. When I started Gather Round, it was really as like an extra. It was like a supplement that I was just kind of bringing in because I liked the look of it. But once I fell in love with that, with Oceania, once I fell in love with it, I was like, okay, I need more of this in my homeschool. I loved it and I wanted to carry on doing it. And so I found a way that I could keep Gather Round but use it strictly as our science curriculum. So for me, I like to pick the science-heavy units from Gather Round. So with all that being said, some pros of Gather Round, in my opinion, are as follows. I absolutely love how these books are laid out. I love the material in the teacher's guide, and I love how I'm able to teach all of my kids at the same time. I also really appreciate the app with all of the resources on there. It makes my job as teacher so much easier. I don't have to sit there and research videos to go along with what we've just read, because Gather Round has a resource page and an app. You go and click the links. It makes the job as teacher so much easier. I love that it's available as a PDF because, of course, I live in New Zealand, and so buying printed material from the United States and having it shipped here is like, it's just a joke. It costs way too much money. So I really appreciate that Gather Round Homeschool offers the digital downloads and that I can print everything off myself here on my Epson EcoTank. And I really like the flexibility that printing it myself gives me, which I'll talk here in a minute about when I talk about some cons of Gather Round. I also really love that Gather Round never shies away from controversial topics. In every unit we've done, there has always been something really controversial, some topic, some discussion, and Rebecca will always have both viewpoints put together, and then, you know, it'll prompt you to be like, discuss this with your family. What do you guys think? What's your perspective on this? I absolutely love and appreciate those controversial talking points, because some of the stuff, and I honestly can't think of an example right now, but some of the controversial things are things that you don't really think to talk about with kids, but when it's brought up in a curriculum like this, it makes it really easy to talk about it with children. And also seeing it from the two different perspectives makes it easier for children to understand and makes it easier for the parent to explain. All in all, I'm absolutely in love with Gather Round. I will continue using Gather Round Homeschool as our science curriculum until I run out of science heavy units to pick from, honestly. And at that point, I don't know, I might just fully switch to being exclusively Gather Round. I don't know. We'll see what the future lends. And I think a big reason why I feel so emotionally attached to Gather Round isn't necessarily the curriculum itself, it's where we were at in our homeschooling journey at the time. So I've mentioned that Oceania was the unit that really stands out to me with all the units that we've done. Oceania was by far the most fruitful, in my opinion. And when I think back to that point in time, I can almost get emotional thinking about it because it was such a beautiful point in our homeschooling journey. We had just started homeschooling. I had all my girls home with me for the first time in forever, and you know, it was a learning experience. We were in this new point in our lives, in our family, in our journeys, and we just had an absolutely beautiful time studying the history of Oceania, as well as, you know, how this land that we live on was formed and created. And like, oh, I think back on those memories, and honestly, term 1 of last year, that first term we started homeschooling, was the best term of our homeschooling journey thus far. And that's a really bold statement to make. And you know, of course, that's not all to do with the Gather Round unit. And in contrast, when we did the human body, later on that year, we had just moved house, we were in a new place, we didn't have our homeschool group anymore. It was really hard to make new friends. I personally was struggling with some mental health issues at the time, and so human body for me doesn't stand out as much as Oceania does because I was in a different mental state. My kids were in a different mental space. You know, we were in a whole new house with, you know, less homeschooling resources. We weren't able to take everything with us, and it was just a really difficult time, but you know, we managed to push through and actually do the unit. But it wasn't as fruitful as other units have been. And I think honestly it comes down to where you're at in your own personal journey, where your family is at. And that is the beauty of Gather Round, in my opinion, is that you can make this curriculum work for you. You do not have to work for the curriculum. I see a lot of reviews here online talking about how there's too much reading, there's too much writing, this, that, and the next thing. But what I would say to that is, don't do all of the reading. Don't make your kids do all of the writing. You make the curriculum work for you, not the other way around. Moving on now to some real talk, not necessarily cons, but you know, some more not so positive opinions about Gather Round. There is a lot of reading. There definitely is. In the teacher's guide, some of the units are a lot more wordy than others, and it does involve a lot of reading on the teacher's behalf. And some of the information, because it's geared toward, you know, pre-reader all the way up to high school, some of the information in the units is very, very wordy, you know, particularly with like the human body unit. There was stuff in there that would go way over my kids' heads. Like there would be no understanding of what I was talking about. So I, as mama and as teacher, I have always done my due diligence when it comes to what I read from the Gather Round units, and I can show you a little this was our farming and food. I have always highlighted what I was going to be reading to my girls prior to us actually doing the lesson. This was something I started doing after we did Oceania, and it was something that I most definitely carried on. Look, there's, I don't even, is the camera picking that up? There's hardly anything that I read here. So I have always gone through our units and picked out what I thought was relevant to my children and left out what I knew was not going to be relevant or what would just go right over their heads. And I have discussed this with a couple of other friends who use Gather Round as well. And their argument's been, well, it's a teacher's guide. I shouldn't have to pre-read it, or I shouldn't have to pick out information that I want. It should all be there, ready to go. Fair enough if you feel that way, but for me personally, it's not hard to just highlight the info that I want to read and leave out everything else that's irrelevant to us. But I can definitely see how that would be seen as a con. My last con, well, my last negative comment that I have to admit is that the student notebooks can be very, very dry and very, very boring, for my children at least. And so because a lot of what's in the student notebooks can be very dry, I have always, ever since we did farming, I have always added more to my girls' books. And this kind of is, I guess, a pro and a con in a way. I like that I have the flexibility to do that because I'm able to print everything myself at home and I put the books together myself. I'm able to add more to the Gather Round student notebooks, and I have always done this. So I have a subscription to twinkle.co.nz. I think you guys in the United States may also have Twinkle. Teachers Pay Teachers would probably be another good resource that you could potentially pull from. So what I have always done when I'm putting the Girls Gather Round books together is I'll go through every lesson and see, okay, oh well, this one, for example with farming, okay, well this lesson is about cows. So then I will go on Twinkle and find a bunch of cow related fun printable stuff. Crosswords, mazes, maybe writing prompts about cows, some type of easily printed art thing that they could just cut out, like a cut and paste thing, a search and find, anything to do with that particular lesson, I would print out and add to each of their books. I would go to the next lesson, okay, this one's about pigs, and then I would do the same thing. And that is what I've always done when putting the Girls Gather Round notebooks together. And yeah, I would say that this is a big con of Gather Round. I do really find their student notebooks to be quite dry. My girls honestly don't like the student notebooks very much when I don't add things to them. And so the reason I have added things to them and continue to do so is because it holds their attention for a bit longer. They can sit and do the coloring pages that I've put in. They can do the mazes and the crosswords and all the things while they're listening to me. Whereas if those pages weren't in their notebooks, they'd probably lose attention pretty quickly. I like the freedom that I have to be able to do that for my children. However, it is kind of a con because I wish that the notebooking pages were a bit more interesting. Now, this kind of leads me into my next point, which is I have been very tempted in the past to only purchase the teacher's guide with the one student book and then just not print the student books at all. I have been tempted to only use the teacher's guide as a read aloud. However, kind of leading into this next negative point is that there's actually a lot of information, especially in my oldest daughter's notebook, which she is in, I mentioned before, she is in early elementary. And there's actually a lot of really great information throughout her early elementary book that is not in my teacher's guide. So, for example, the history and the social studies, the science even, there's some science experiments in the student books that are not present in the teacher's guides. So if I were to not print out any of the student books at all, I kind of feel like my kids would be missing out on some of that relevant information. So it's almost like I feel kind of stuck. Like, I don't want to buy the whole family digital download because I know that my girls won't actually finish their notebooks. They never have finished their notebooks. As long as we've been doing Gather Round, there are always pages left untouched. And, it's a lot of wasted ink, it's a lot of wasted paper, and it's a lot of wasted time because, as I mentioned before, I spend a lot of time going through the units and preparing them, making sure everything's in the right places, binding them. It's a lot of time and money and energy from my behalf. So I feel like I don't want to continue doing that, but at the same time, I feel like they'll be missing out on some of the really great info that is in those student books. So I don't know. That is kind of where I'm at the moment. I'm almost in a state of limbo, and yeah, it makes it a little bit difficult for me. But all of that being said, I am still very much a hardcore gather round user. We definitely don't use it exclusively, but I do like it for its science related aspects. And I will continue using these science heavy units as long as I can, because I do truly love this curriculum, despite the fact that I have to tweak it a lot. Again, you know, the tweaks that I have to make, I've been doing this now for 1.5 years, and yes, it's time, it's effort, it's money, almost being wasted with printer ink and paper and all of that. But it's not something that I mind. In fact, I really like the nature of putting their gather round units together, and I think maybe it's something that drives me, and maybe that's another reason why I continue using it, is because I actually like the challenge of, ooh, what can I find to go along with this unit? What art project? What blah 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 blah. But that is my honest opinion. There are some amazing pros, and there are also some cons to using gather round, but you just do what you gotta do, and you make it work for you and your family. One question I often see online is, can a secular homeschooler use gather round? My answer to this would be that all depends on how you feel about it. So I have not mentioned here on my channel what religion we are, but I do identify our homeschool as secular. Even though we use gather round, even though we use the good and the beautiful, we are actually secular homeschoolers. We don't identify as Christian, and that's a whole nother situation that I'm not going to talk about right now. But in short, can a secular homeschooler use gather round? Well, for us personally, yes, we're secular homeschoolers using gather round, and I don't have a problem with it at all. Again, I make this curriculum work for our family, not the other way around. I don't read the Bible portions. My kids do not have to do the Bible work in their notebooks. We don't do the prayers or the devotionals. We just completely skip all of that. Honestly, hasn't ever affected the way that we use this curriculum. And my children really don't even notice that it's in there. They know to skip the Bible pages, and that's not a problem with them. They're more than happy to skip some pages in the notebook. But honestly, the fact that this curriculum is faith-based has never been an issue for me. However, if you are a secular homeschooler and you really don't want your kids being exposed to Christianity in the slightest, then it might not be for you. So really it all comes down to how comfortable you are with it. So Gather Round has one annual sale every year, one and only generally. There has been talk of potentially 2 this year, but I don't know about that. But their sale this year is going to be March 28th through to March 30th. It's only open for a couple of days. I most definitely am going to be jumping on board to get a couple of new units for our homeschool. Now, I have printed out here, Gather Round has just come out with this beautiful catalog, and I will put the link in the description box below if you're interested. I have not yet laminated or bound this together. I do intend to, but I just haven't had time yet. But I love, oh, it's not going to be very good, you guys, to show you this because I have not bound it yet. But basically this is what we're working with. It's a beautiful little catalog, and it makes browsing the Gather Round units a lot more easily accessible. So, what am I going to be buying from the Gather Round sale? Well, the first unit that I'm going to be buying during this Gather Round sale is Living Off the Land. This is a unit that I have had my eye on since forever, and I am feeling like now is the time. this is the unit that I want to do in term 2 of this year. So our seasons are, of course, the opposite to you guys in the States. You guys have just come into spring. We have just moved into autumn. Which is wonderful. No, I do actually like autumn weather, but yeah, you know, knowing that the winter is coming, yeah, it just puts a damper on everything, but that's okay. And I do know that living off the land, everyone that talks about it says it's a really good one to do in the autumn winter time, because the people who are living off this land are preparing for winter. So I'm really excited to do this unit. My oldest daughter specifically requested it. I sat them down, showed them the catalog, we talked about all the units together, and Living Off the Land was the very first one that they chose. So that is what I'm going to be buying. Again, I'm still a little bit conflicted as to whether or not I'm only going to get the teacher's guide and the one student book, or whether or not I'm going to purchase the family bundle. I honestly don't know yet. I'm probably gonna get the family bundle, you know, because as I mentioned before, there's a lot of info in there that there's a lot of info in those student notebooks that I like and that I want my kids to have. And again, like I mentioned, I like the challenge of putting those books together. It's a difficult one, but it's one I enjoy. So yeah, I'm probably gonna get the family bundle of Living Off the Land, to be honest. And the next one that we are going to be buying during this Gather Round sale is Earth Science. Again, this is one that I've had my eye on for the longest time, ever since we did Oceania, where we learned about volcanoes and earthquakes and all of that. Earth Science has been on my radar since then, and actually it'll work out perfectly because just today, it's really cloudy outside today, and my 7-year-old was like, what are the clouds? Like, what are the clouds doing? Why are the clouds there? Is there only a certain number of clouds? Do the clouds come and go? Are more clouds made? She was asking all these questions, you guys, that I was like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. So Earth Science, I think, will be a great unit to do. Okay, the next unit that I'm going to be getting during this Gather Round sale is Inventions and Ideas. This, again, is one, I mean, gosh, you guys, I've had my eye on all of the units from Gather Round, every single one I want, but you know. So yeah, I've also had my eye on this one. We have been studying Da Vinci as of late, and so I think the Inventions and Ideas unit will kind of tie in with that, but at the same time I'm kind of like, oh, it's not really a science heavy unit, but I guess it kind of is. It will kind of go along with the idea of physics and all of that, so I don't know. But that is another one that I'm going to be getting during this Gather Round sale, and I am very excited to take a good look through it all and get to know this unit a bit more. And that is actually it. I am only going to be getting 3 units from this upcoming Gather Round sale: Living Off the Land, which we're going to be doing next term, Earth Science, which I don't know when we're going to be doing, and Inventions and Ideas, which I also don't know when we're going to be doing. So there you have it. That is what we're going to be getting during this Gather Round sale, and I am really, really excited about it. I have it marked in my calendar. I can't wait. I can't wait to start organizing these units, and I can't wait to get into them. Alright, you guys, that is going to be it from me for today's video. My honest opinion and thoughts on Gather Round Homeschool's curriculum, as well as what I'm going to be buying in the upcoming sale. If you guys have any questions related to Gather Round, please put them down below, and I will do my best to answer all of those to the best of my knowledge. Alright, I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!